All right, so today we're gonna dive into some new legislation
Oh,
that's really making a difference for veterans who are looking to train as commercial drivers.
sounds good.
Yeah, we've got excerpts from two bills to look at.
All right.
HR 2830, which
Uh-huh.
was introduced in the House,
Okay.
and then S 656, which is the one that actually got passed into law.
Gotcha.
So our mission today is to really break down how this legislation makes it easier for veterans
Right.
to get approved for these CDL training programs.
It's really interesting. Yeah, it's a fascinating story about how a very targeted policy change
Yeah.
can have this huge impact on people's lives.
Okay, so before we get into the actual bills themselves,
Right.
can you kind of just paint the picture for our listener?
Sure.
What was it like for a veteran wanting to use their GI Bill benefits for this kind of training
Yeah.
before this legislation came along?
So imagine this. You're a veteran.
Yeah.
You're ready for a new career path.
Mhm.
You're thinking, okay, maybe truck driving's a good fit.
Okay.
You've earned your GI Bill benefits,
Right.
which can help cover the cost of training.
Yeah.
But here's the problem. Getting a CDL program approved under the GI Bill
Mm-hmm.
wasn't always easy,
I see.
especially if the program was offered at multiple locations of the
Oh.
same school.
Right.
Each branch might have needed its own separate approval,
Wow.
which could cause all kinds of delays and frustrations for veterans who are ready to get started.
So it's almost like this red tape
Exactly.
that they had to cut through
Yeah.
before they could even start.
A bureaucratic web.
Yeah.
And that's where HR 2830 comes in,
Okay.
the Veteran Improvement Commercial Driver License Act of 2023.
Okay.
It steps in with a proposed solution.
All right, so let's talk about that solution.
Yeah.
How did HR 2830 aim to change this approval process?
It proposed amending the law
Right.
that governs veterans' educational benefits.
Okay.
Can you break that down a bit more?
Yeah, absolutely.
Basically, the bill wanted to add a new rule
Mm-hmm.
that would create an exemption
Okay.
from this multi-location approval requirement.
Gotcha.
But it wasn't a blanket exemption.
Okay.
There were conditions
Right, that makes sense.
to make sure that everything was still high quality.
You don't want to compromise the quality just to speed up the process.
Exactly.
So what were those conditions?
The main condition
Yeah.
was that any branch location
Mhm.
wanting to use this exemption
Right.
would have to use the exact same curriculum
Oh, okay.
as the program that was already approved
Okay.
at the main location.
It's like a guarantee that.
Think of it as a guarantee that the training is consistent
Yeah.
and meets the same standards.
Yeah, so a standardized approach
Exactly.
no matter which branch they go to.
Yep. And to make sure it's accountable,
Okay.
the bill also required institutions
Mhm.
to send in annual reports
Okay.
showing that they were keeping curriculum consistent.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
Yeah.
So it sounds like a really smart approach to streamline things,
Yeah,
but then also make sure that these programs are actually good.
exactly.
And now for the interesting part,
Oh.
S656, the bill that actually became law
Right.
is basically identical to HR 2830.
Pretty much, yeah.
So the main idea stayed the same
It did, yeah. The core intent remained intact.
throughout the whole process.
A whole process, yeah.
That's impressive.
It is. And what's even better
Yeah.
is that it got support from both parties.
Wow.
Both the House and the Senate passed it
That's awesome.
before it was signed into law.
Yeah, you don't see that very often,
Not very often,
especially with policy changes.
especially these days.
Yeah, and I think that really shows
Right.
how important it is to support our veterans
Absolutely.
and their transition back into civilian life.
Definitely.
It seems like lawmakers from both sides
Yeah.
agreed that this was a good change.
They did. A common sense change.
Yeah, that would actually make a difference.
That's right.
Yeah, and that's when we start to see the real impact
Exactly.
of this legislation.
This streamlined process could save so much time
Right.
for veterans
Yeah.
who want to start their CDL training.
Yeah, that's a big deal.
It is. We could be talking weeks or even months shaved off the waiting time.
And for someone who's ready to get back on their feet and
Right.
start a new career,
Yeah.
that time saving is huge.
Life-changing, potentially.
And it's not just about time.
It's not, you're right.
It can also save money
Exactly.
for both the veterans
Yeah.
and the schools.
Less paperwork, less hassle.
Less administrative
It's
burden
a burden.
means that everyone can save money.
Potentially, yeah.
So it's like this chain reaction
It is.
of good things happening.
Yeah, less waiting, potential cost savings,
Right.
and faster access to a career.
But I do have a question.
Okay.
How do we make sure that the quality isn't being sacrificed just to make things faster and more efficient?
That's a great question.
Are there safeguards in place?
There are.
to guarantee that veterans are still getting the best training possible?
The legislation gives that power to the Secretary of Veterans Affairs.
Okay.
They can withhold exemptions
Interesting.
if there are any concerns about the quality of a program
Oh, wow.
or if there are accountability issues.
So it's not just a free pass.
Not at all.
There's actual oversight.
Definitely.
Make sure that veterans are getting training
Yes.
that's actually going to prepare them for this job.
Exactly.
That's great to know.
It is.
So there's like a real system in place to make
Okay.
sure that everything stays high quality.
It goes even further than that, actually.
Yeah.
The Secretary of Veterans Affairs
Okay.
actually works together
Mm-hmm.
with the Secretary of Transportation to keep an eye on how these programs are doing.
Okay.
They even use something called the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration's
Yeah.
training provider registry.
So like a database.
It gives them this complete picture
Okay.
of how well the programs are preparing students.
That's good to know
It really is.
that there's that level of oversight.
Yeah, it's not just about approving programs.
Right.
It's about making sure they're actually effective.
So it tackles the problem from both sides. Streamlining the process.
Right.
But then also,
Making sure there's accountability.
maintaining those standards.
Exactly. And this is where
Yeah.
we start to see some real positive outcomes.
Okay, I like that.
Think about the impact this has
Yeah.
on veterans who are waiting to start their training.
Right.
This streamlined process could really speed things up.
Yeah, how much faster are we talking?
Potentially could shave off
Hmm.
weeks or even months.
Wow, that's significant.
It is, especially
yeah.
for someone who's eager to start a new career.
Right, like you said, ready to get back on their feet.
And there's an economic angle to this too.
Oh, really? Tell me more about that.
So think about the shortage of truck drivers we've got right now.
Yeah, that's a big problem.
It's a huge problem.
It impacts everything. It ripples through the whole economy.
Yeah.
And this legislation could actually help with that
Oh, wow. How
by making it easier for veterans
Okay.
to get into the trucking industry.
That makes sense.
Their experience and the discipline they learned in the military
Right.
would make them great truck drivers.
Yeah, it's a good fit.
It is. And there's so many job opportunities out there.
Wow. So it's really a win-win.
I think so.
It helps the veterans and the trucking industries
Absolutely.
all at the same time.
And it could have a positive impact on the economy.
It makes you think,
It does.
could this kind of approach be used in other industries
It's a great question.
where veterans are facing similar challenges?
Like healthcare, for example.
Yeah.
Healthcare.
There's always a need for more healthcare workers.
That's true.
And a lot of veterans
Right.
have medical training from their time in the service.
So if we could streamline things for them,
Exactly.
make it easier to transition,
That would be amazing.
what other fields do you think this could apply to?
Well, the IT sector is booming right now.
It is, yeah.
And a lot of veterans have those technical skills
Right.
from their military experience.
So with the right training,
Exactly.
they could step right into those roles.
And let's not forget about renewable energy.
Oh, that's a good one.
That's a growing field,
Yeah.
and they need skilled workers.
And veterans could be a perfect fit.
They often have experience
Mhm.
working with complex systems and technology.
That's exactly what's needed in renewable energy.
It is.
It's incredible to think about
It is.
all the potential benefits.
It's not just about one industry.
right.
It's about a mindset.
Of making things easier for veterans.
Exactly.
This conversation has been really eye-opening.
I'm glad.
It's easy to get lost in the details of these bills,
I know what you mean.
but you help me see the human side of it.
I think it's important to remember that
Yeah.
it's not just words on a page.
Right.
These are policies that
Yeah.
can really change people's lives.
For our listener,
Right.
I hope they're walking away with a
Yeah.
better understanding,
Of the impact.
of how these policy changes can create real opportunities.
And positive outcomes for veterans.
And I think it also shows
I agree.
a real commitment
Yes.
to supporting veterans
Thank
and
you.
recognizing all they bring to the table.
Their skills, their experience, their dedication,
Right.
it's all valuable.
Absolutely.
And this whole conversation has got me thinking,
Okay.
what if this is just the beginning?
What do you mean?
What if there are other ways we can
Okay.
make things easier for veterans?
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
we've seen how well this works with
Mhm.
CDL training.
So what other systems or processes
Like it's
could
a-
we be looking at?
That's the question.
That's a good question.
That's what we should all be thinking about. It really does make you think. This has been a really great conversation.
I did it.
So we've talked about this legislation,
Mm-hmm.
its impact on the trucking industry,
Yes.
and even how it could be a model for other fields.
It could.
But before we wrap up,
Okay.
is there one key takeaway
I think the main thing is
Yeah.
that even small policy changes can have a big impact.
Right, like a ripple effect.
Exactly.
So in this case, it's
Right.
helping veterans get into a career
A great career
that's in high demand.
and one that pays well.
But it's also about
Yeah,
making that transition smoother
for sure.
for those who have served.
It shouldn't be all about paperwork and bureaucracy.
Right. It should be about using their skills and their experience
To build a new life.
to build a new chapter.
You got it.
And this whole conversation has got me thinking,
Oh, yeah.
what if this legislation
Uh-huh.
is just the beginning?
The tip of the iceberg.
Like what other things?
Could we be doing to support veterans?
Right. What other systems
Yeah.
could we be simplifying?
To really make a difference in their lives.
That's the challenge.
That's the question we need to be asking.
It is. And I think it's
Right.
important to keep that conversation going.
I agree. This has been such a thought-provoking discussion.
It has.
And to our listener, thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
We appreciate you listening
We hope you've learned something new.
and that it's given you some new ideas.
And remember,
Okay.
keep asking those questions.
Never stop questioning.
Because even small changes,
Even small changes
To the
can have a
basic.
huge impact.
they can, that's right.
Until next time.
See you then.